In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
XAI, budget season, school funding, and much more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by a roundtable of journalists talking about some of the biggest stories of the week. Toby Sells is news editor with the Memphis Flyer. Thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Abigail Warren covers the suburbs and other things for us at the Daily Memphian. Thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. Before we get to the big stories of the week, I'll just give, as we move through various election interviews and such, we've got county general and federal and state primary elections coming up August 6th with the early voting starting July 17th. We've had Democratic candidate for sheriff, Anthony Buckner, on the show last week. We also had John DeBerry, the Republican candidate for county mayor, on a couple weeks ago. We've got Mikkel Lowry, the Democrat for mayor, coming up soon. And we've reached out to the Republican candidate for sheriff, hope to get him on before elections. All that moves towards the federal and state general, November 3rd. And we'll try to get the candidates for the various redistricting, because I know people have asked me about that. It's tough to get all the candidates right now for the three districts prior to the primary, but after the primary, we'll try to get those candidates on. For this week, though, why don't we start? We'll start with you, Toby. There's a lot going on with XAI, a topic that is both national and international in terms of both, in some communities, celebrating the arrival of data centers. There's a lot of pushback on data centers, a lot of confusion. We've got our own set of data centers here. So let's walk through some of the news of this past week or two.
Big news was XAI and its gray water facility hit city council up there. This facility is supposed to take the city's wastewater, treat it in such a way to be able to cool its big computer system here in Memphis, and not use the great aquifer water from the Memphis Sand Aquifer, of which XAI just purchased 25 million gallons from MLGW recently. It's a staggering amount of water that goes into cooling these things. At first, XAI said, of course, we're going to build this facility down here, really close. It makes a lot of sense. Everybody celebrated that as a move for, environmental stewardship. And then for some reason they backed off. They said, this is not a priority for us right now. It doesn't mean we're not going to come back to it. But we just don't know where we are right now. And that set off alarm bells. Everybody's like, this thing was promised, and now you're just going to suck all of our great aquifer water out of here. We need to do something. Can you please give us some clarity? Doug McGowan, President and CEO of MLGW, went before the council and said, look, we're still in great talks with these people. Time passed, and now it came before the city council this Tuesday with the chief legal officer in front of the council trying to ferret out and give what we can know about this facility. And the answers were super vague. Seems like Jerry Green and maybe J.B. Smiley had some interactions with XAI people behind the scenes. They wanted to get it out in front of the public to see, is this thing a go or is it not a go? And the best that the chief legal officer, I can't remember her name off the top, thank you, was that we have pretty strong indications that they're going to do this. The land sale for the facility was just made final. It's about $820,000. And but really beyond that, we don't, and she just mentioned that permitting for this thing is vaguely happening in April, but past that, there was no concrete, we are absolutely going to get this done in Memphis, despite, strong indications otherwise. And it really goes into the cloak and dagger of this whole thing, right? They kind of came in here really quickly. Nobody knew how or when this deal got done. And every step along the way has been met with this kind of walls and layers of secrecy about this thing. And really what people want, they want this amazing source of water protected. I think it gets down to, I know I'm talking a lot, it gets down to kind of two questions, and they might be the same question, is, do we trust Elon Musk? and does Elon Musk care about Memphis, I think. And we're going to see how this plays out as we go down the road.
It's worth noting that Greywater facility was also, it was hoped that the big power plant, the TVA power plant there, could use that water. The steel plant could use that water. I mean, and they are using water directly from the aquifer, if I'm not mistaken. So there were a whole lot of uses for that and hopes for it. There's definitely been some word that, so XAI is now part of SpaceX, which puts the rocket ship company, which also includes Starlink and some other entities. All that has what will be the largest IPO ever. Probably, I think, if this airs Friday, it'll be on Friday. There's been some talk that is part of the slowdown. That once they get the deal done, they get that IPO done, they'll get back on track. That's not promised at all. There's also, I don't know, maybe, Bill, thoughts on that? You've covered council for a long time. Is this how things sometimes work when you've got these, as Toby said, these kind of veiled, unclear economic development projects, which this essentially is?
Yeah, it is kind of cloak and dagger stuff. It's more so with the history of this company, who, as Toby mentioned, really came here, set up shop in Electrolux, the old Electrolux plant, before anyone really knew what was going on there. So that's kind of heightened it. There is a pretty persistent strain of political opposition to this. And the secrecy has really helped to fan the flames of the movement.
And the proponents, though, will continue to say there are jobs, and there is, $25 million, give or take, of new property tax revenue for the city, another $25 million to the county, at a time when both entities certainly, say they need the money. And so that also,
and a Greywater plant, as we mentioned.
If that happens,
that is not just for XAI.
Yeah. I should also note, XAI also built another big computer facility data center down in DeSoto County this week. Residents are suing over the gas turbines, the noise that the gas turbines that is not unique to the Memphis area, that those are often put in place to power these big data centers being built around the country. And then a nearly 600-acre DeSoto Innovation District that was to include some kind of data center, that was rejected by DeSoto County, the planning board, I believe.
Even after the developers took the data center out of the plans.
But which sort of speaks to this distrust that, again, in people's skepticism, what is this, what's going on? The other news with XAI, or I don't know which one to say, SpaceX XAI with Starlink. And, by the way, Twitter. Along with the IPO, they also had news over the last couple of weeks. They are selling a lot of that compute, right? They're leasing the computers and the data, the computer facility to other companies. You want to talk about that, Toby, for a second?
Sure. And any of this news that we've gotten about this is because of that coming IPO, right? Otherwise, we would have no idea what they're doing in there. And hopefully, this is a sign of things to come. As they become this public company, we'll know how many employees are at the data center, stuff we don't know now. But what we do know is that XAI has signed an agreement deal with Anthropic. They're going to house their Claude AI system at one of the Colossus facilities down here, which shows that they've built out tons of compute, enough to house a whole other AI language model here. And then this week we found out that Google is also going to rent some space in Memphis for its Gemini. I think it's Gemini, for one of their big language models that they've got here. So, we're starting to see what these facilities are going to be. I thought it was just for Grok when they're coming in, which is XAI's.
And I follow this stuff way too much.
Yeah.
And so a big part of it is that Grok, the large language model that was launched by Elon Musk, is not very popular, and by most assessments, not very good.
That's right.
Claude is one of the best. They're desperate for more compute, like all these companies. So, it's arguably a smart business move for Elon Musk and company just to lease that space out.
It really seems to be the whole AI race that's going on among these companies.
Yeah. It's funny, too, to hear, like, a lot of the stuff I read and listen to about this whole thing, they reference Memphis. They're referencing the big, Colossus in Memphis. But let me just get you in the conversation here, Abigail. We're talking about power, which also brings up a segue to infrastructure, which a lot of this is about infrastructure, but MLGW, which the suburbs for years have wanted more representation on the MLGW board, although it's a Memphis city-owned asset. Some of the suburbs are big customers. Give us an update on that.
So the suburban mayors for years now have advocated that they should have a voting representation on the MLGW board. Currently, John Butler, the president of AgriCenter International, and then James Llewellyn, the former town administrator for Collierville, serve on the MLGW board, but they don't have a vote. They're more just advisory members. But the state this year actually approved a law, and the way it affects Memphis is the two largest suburbs will get voting representation. So Bartlett will have a member, Mayor David Parsons, and will get to choose who their member is, and then Collierville, and the Collierville Mayor Maureen Fraser will get to choose that. So Representative Kevin Vaughn did say when this was going through the legislature that this is the future of state law, that public utilities are going to be legislation that we see going forward. And he even said he'd be favorable to them keeping Butler and Llewellyn on the board, but we'll see.
Now it's voting, yes. Representatives. Are they talking for big changes with MLGW, or is it more the kind of in the weeds? Budgets are 1%, 2% increase. I'm making that number up. I haven't heard them say we want radical change at MLGW.
I don't think they want radical change, but I think it's more to give. You do have 30% of your ratepayers living outside the suburbs. I mean, some of the suburbs have their own water, but some of the suburbs also get water from MLGW. They all get power from MLGW. So I think it's to have voting representation and have a say, really, that counts. Obviously, most of the people that are on the MLGW board do live in Memphis, and so Memphis is going to win the day. They do have most of the residents in Shelby County, but it will give a vote that it does weigh. But, I talked to James Llewellyn when we were writing this, and he said they really do respect what he and John Butler do have to say. He feels like they really do respect their opinion and value it. But now the suburbs, which the mayors have advocated for a long time, will have a vote.
Let's stay with infrastructure for a second, and stuff that we probably, isn't really fun to talk about, but is necessary to talk about, which is sanitation, and that came up in a lot of the suburban budgets. But also we'll segue into some conversation about sewers, which feeds into growth and lack of growth sometimes in the area. But talk about budget season was largely uneventful in the suburbs, except for two things: schools, which we'll circle back to later, school funding, and then the sanitation fees. Mm-hmm. Talk about the sanitation fees.
Yeah, so it is an election year. Usually in an election year, there's not a tax increase. There was no tax increase. But in Germantown, really the hot topic was sanitation. The fees are going up quite significantly. And part of it was Germantown had a contract with Waste Pro from 2016 until 2026. Obviously, with COVID, inflation, challenges to get labor, you have to provide better wages. So they did have to raise the rates quite significantly by between 60 and 80%, depending on which services you get. Excuse me.
No, that's right. And another story, Michael Waddell on our staff did a big roundup of where various suburbs are in terms of sewers. Some suburbs are dependent on Memphis for sewers. I'm going to get a fact check here from Bill. And others are in situations where they need to build out, like Bartlett. Really, it's been a big issue up there that they need to build out their own sewers. Memphis, towards the end of the Strickland administration, said, hey, no more new hookups to the Memphis sewer system, or limiting
in the unincorporated
area. Thank you, which was kind of a panic for some of the suburbs who want. You can't build more housing, you can't build more commercial if you don't have sewers. Again, people don't want to talk about this, but we did a great show years ago about the history of sewers and Memphis and annexation and how did Memphis become so big geographically and the legacy problems of all that cost. And I remember, I think it was Rick Masson, who's a former chief administrative officer under Harrington, at the very end of that show said, well, it's all about sewers. And all these former CAOs were like, or chiefs of staff were like, yeah, it's all about sewers. And then we did some shows on that. But thoughts on the suburbs having to deal with their own sewers and where Memphis goes in providing or not providing sewer hookups.
And just a note.
Yeah.
When you want wonky, this is the place.
This is it. You have come to the right place. This is the right place.
And the city's stand was a philosophical shift by Strickland to say, we want to build up, we don't want to build out. Why are we enabling suburban sprawl? But it also exposed a shortage of capacity, sewer capacity, within the city itself that needed to be dealt with. Now we're at the point where Paul Young, the current mayor of the city, is saying we can extend that sewer capacity for a fee that will go toward affordable housing starts here in the city of Memphis.
Which is a big goal. We've done shows that, 10,000 plus new within years. I mean, I don't know a lot of people betting that they'll get 10,000 new, but they are starting a whole lot of new. They're trying to start new housing, affordable housing throughout the city.
So obviously the capacity problem has eased to the extent that the city's able to use that as an incentive.
Let's segue into Smoky City. You want to talk about what Smoky City is? Did you cover, or I can do Bill also covered it here?
Yeah, Bill, you explain it.
Yeah.
Smoky City is a section of North Memphis, along with Bearwater, Scudderfield, any other number of names for certain communities within that area. And it's really ground zero at this point for the affordable housing goal of 10,000 new or renovated units by 2030. So we've seen a lot of emerging developers doing 4 or 5 vacant lots that the city owns and turns over in a coordinated manner to build a duplex or a single family home that's just for one family there.
Yeah, and we've done a bunch of those shows. We've got the big project, Smoky City, is $70 million, this new development that was approved. We've talked about how some of these small developers, and we'll get some kind of show because we've been writing about it some, is these big changes to the Unified Development Plan, speaking of wonky, but that really defines how development can and can't happen. It gets back to Memphis 3.0, the big sort of multi-year, multi-decade plan for growth. So we'll get back to some of these zoning issues because these things are sometimes in conflict. People love seeing these housing going up or duplexes going up, but they don't want it next to their house. And all those debates that we've been starting to get into the paper, we'll start getting into.
And we're also starting to see the housing goal link up with that controversy over the UDC, because some people are saying, well, look, if you really want generational wealth, single-family homes are the way to go. And when you mention multifamily, people think of an old and vast apartment complex, when what's being discussed are fourplexes, duplexes, triplexes.
Which are all over Midtown Manhattan right now in all these neighborhoods. Let's stick with, I'm going to go back to you, Abigail, and then and talk about the school funding I mentioned at the top of the show. And this 13 years ago, give or take, when the state law was passed that the suburban school districts could break out into their own separate school districts, there were some tax rules. Talk about those rules and how they're being implemented or not implemented now.
So when, when the suburban districts were established, there was a referendum that residents approved, and one of the things that was set forth in there was part of the state school board rule, which said for city districts, so it doesn't affect Shelby County, this affects the suburban districts. So city districts, they have to have 15 cents of a tax levy to be designated to the schools. So the equivalent of 15 cents. So if you look at what the value of a penny is, if they collect all the property taxes, multiply that by 15, that's the number that should be given to the school districts. So the school districts believe. The cities believe that some of the districts have not been doing that. Some of them have. Some of them say, well, we're paying the debt service. Well, we are mowing the grass. We are paying the benefits for SROs, whatever those things are. Some of the districts are paying less than that for the schools, but they say that they supplement it by other in-kind services. And some of them can give you the breakdown of exactly how much money they give in those things. Now, Superintendent Ted Horrell in Lakeland, he made an interesting point that the law, the state school board rule, and the referendum said operational costs. And so, capital funding is not operational costs. And so Germantown has reached out to the They've reached out to the comptroller and the state school board, and this topic is being talked about internally. They have not heard back, but you have to approve your budget before July 1st, so time is of the essence. And we're recording this Thursday, so if something comes out Friday, we'll write it.
We're talking about, for some of these districts, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's going on from the school district point of view. It's year after year.
Yeah, for some districts, I think Bartlett, that cash transfer has not gone up since like 2017.
Yeah.
For other districts, it's been more recent. I think Germantown, it was more recent years, but they do want to see that money come back. The suburban government has said that they believe that it was 15 cents from when the district started. The state school board told me that as property values rise, that amount should go up.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I smell a lawsuit. I don't know that. I'm just speculating here. So with like 5-6 minutes on show, let's touch briefly on Bill and Toby on the city and county budget seasons. I mentioned some of the good stuff that, or at least, for just not dollars and cents point of view, you've got more property tax revenue coming in from XAI. You've got a pretty stable tax rate for both of them. I remember when taxes were much, much higher than they were, and people were talking about taxes for the city and county combined hitting $8, and they were 7-something. They're not as low as the suburbs, but they're lower. What stands out to you, Bill, in this season?
What stands out is that the city is probably going to have the least contentious budget. There's some talk about a property tax hike, but I don't see 7 votes at this point. That could change depending on what the money is for. On the county side, you've got much more drama. They had to lop 3 cents off of the basic tax rate because the county didn't use all of the appeals allowance on property valuations. Property values are up. That's why the tax rates are going down.
Yeah.
Your tax rate that you pay. So on the county side, there is considerable talk about keeping the rate at the pre-recapture rate, 269 instead of 266. There will be tax hike proposals. They don't appear to have 7 votes.
Yeah.
The real drama is on the capital side, where Lee Harris has proposed, the county mayor, has proposed building a new Treadwell school, a 3rd new school. We don't have a site for the East School, which was the second one. Frazier's almost built. But some county commissioners are saying, wait a minute, has the school system agreed to go for a 3rd new school?
Well, and all that, and we're running out of time, but you've got this takeover happening. The takeover board all but 1 seat has been named, so they'll be meeting soon. We'll get folks from them on. They're going to have a lot to say about what schools get built and don't get built. And you've got, a budget that's not great for the county. You've got the comptroller breathing down their neck over various things, and it's an election year for the county. So you're going to have a new county mayor, a bunch of new county commissioners. So there's much more to follow there. I want to touch on one thing with the city that we're talking about before this, the city budget, although not as contentious as the county budget. But there was discussion of funding updates to AutoZone Park that caught our eye. I don't know, Toby, you want to talk about that?
It did, because it was a fun discussion, and it's about something that, a lot of us use and think about. They need $5 million. The Redbirds say they need $5 million for upgrades over there, not big, huge renovations, just to kind of get it up to minor league standards there. And that really caught the attention of Councilmember Chase Carlisle, who was hesitant to put any more money into this facility and maybe dreaming what it could be next, right? What could be down the road. Do we still need a baseball park downtown? And he seemed to think that no, paraphrasing here, that people aren't watching baseball anymore, everybody's playing pickleball. And, it was kind of a interesting thing to say, and got a lot of attention. Then Edmund Ford Sr. rebuffs back on that and says, of course people are watching baseball. It doesn't even matter because it's, Bill, help me out here, it's
baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Which is a phrase that he repeated.
Not an endorsement.
It's not. He repeated the phrase several times in his defense of keeping baseball downtown. So, there's two very ends of that spectrum there, and we'll see, maybe as a conversation goes there, we'll get some more maybe, mediated comments.
But you also have numbers on, I think one of the problem for AutoZone, Redbird Stadium, is that the promises that we remember, that Abigail probably does not, which is fine, were that, it would be full, there'd be so many people. In fact, it's a beautiful stadium, it's cool, it's fun to go to, it's all that, but it's rarely full. It averages, 3,000?
About 3,000 a game. I did a little bit of digging in minor league baseball numbers, and so about 3,000 a game this season. The top minor league, Chattanooga Lookouts, because they've got a brand new multi-million-dollar stadium. Memphis, they're not in the top 25 as far as attendance. They're not in the bottom 25. They're somewhere in the middle. I'll
also say that this council, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, approved $55 million. None of this should be new. They said a year ago, we're going to put $55 million into this. We want to extend them. And people can say they don't like baseball, they don't want to spend money on these things. Other people are saying, look, you can't have a big empty stadium in the heart of downtown. All you're going to do is fill that with a AA or single A baseball team who probably will draw fewer people. I'm out of time. Yes. I'm out of time only because I want to do one last thing here, and I want to thank you all. Some sad news. Mike LaBonia, who is longtime CEO and president of WKNO, he retired some years ago. He passed away this past week. And Mike was very much a visionary and a kind of force to get this brand new studio. I guess it's 15, 16 years old now that we sit in. And also part of their they were in the basement of a building on the South Campus, WKNO was, on South Campus of U of M. This big facility, state of the art, HD, all that kind of stuff. Also, he made a commitment to do more local programming. And at the time, I was running the old Daily News and had a meeting with him, and he wanted Bill, content from Bill and article. They wanted to do some local news stuff, and Mike I can't do my impersonation right now, and it wouldn't be fair, but he had a great voice and he looked at me and he goes, and you can host a show. And I was like, great. I've never hosted a show. He goes, nah, you'll be fine. And we got a live statewide Republican governor's debate. You'll host that. You'll moderate. It'll be great. And 16, going into our 17th season, I owe Mike a lot. I appreciate his whatever he saw in that one meeting and his confidence in me, especially in that first year when I was basically a high school intern. So our thoughts with his family and thank him for his incredible commitment to WKNO on all the things that we have here. But that is all the time. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full episode online, and we will see you next week.